This is just so revolting, so infuriating, and such a damning indictment. Now, the US in particular and its allies have been trumpeting the fact that it is now airdropping aid on Gaza. They know that famine stalks the land, particularly hitting hundreds of thousands of people in the north. They know that the public in the West are increasingly aware that Palestinian children are starving to death in Gaza. And they know that, understandably, people who aren't sociopaths are getting angry about it. They also know that people are increasingly aware that it is Israel starving Gaza to death, the very same Israel which is only able to get away with mass murder because of the patronage of the United States of America. So rather than forcing Israel to stop starving Gaza to death, the US administration has come up with what they think is an ingenious PR stunt to airdrop aid onto Gaza. Now, as it was, this was insulting. In their first round of airdrops, they dropped 38,000 meals. That was enough to feed, guess what percentage of Gaza? Around 1.72% of the entire population for a single meal for one single day. It's the equivalent of one aid truck. Pathetic. But then today, it was announced that 5 Palestinians were killed and 10 injured when they were hit by a pallet of aid parachuted into Gaza. It happened near a coastal refugee camp, somewhere particularly devastated by Israel's onslaught, after the parachute failed to deploy properly and then hit a group of men, teenagers, and little kids. Now, one of those victims reportedly killed was a little Palestinian boy called Mohamed Hussam Muqdad. This is exactly what aid agencies are warned about. They said that airdrops were inadequate, inaccurate, and dangerous. We are talking, after all, about one of the most densely populated populations on Earth, dropping aid in a completely untargeted way. Those doing so must have known there was a high risk of this happening. Now, what's so offensive is you first get US bombs dropped on Gaza, killing Palestinians, and when they drop a tiny number, proportionally speaking, of aid pallets for PR purposes, that also kills Palestinians. They are killing Palestinians from the air with bombs and airdrops for PR purposes. Now, the parachutes also repeatedly fall into the ocean, leading to desperately hungry children, in particular, to risk their lives as they swim and try and get the aid. There's other reports of other boxes breaking breaking up midair, and scattering their contents like projectiles onto these desperately starving human beings. Now, the other point is it's not just the point about this is it's not targeted, is it, at people based on need? It's a total lottery as to whether you're near an airdrop or not. Now, Palestinians also, like anyone, regard it as absolutely humiliating to be forced to run after scraps of aid dropped from the air. On top of all this, the US has now offered another solution, supposedly, which is building a temporary pier on the coast of Gaza in the Mediterranean Sea to help deliver humanitarian aid. Note, there isn't an airport in Gaza. Why? Because the Israelis banned it. They also banned Gaza from having an airport. One of many reasons Gaza was, legally speaking, under Israeli occupation before this current horror began. Now, the US also issued a joint statement with the European Commission, Cyprus, the United Arab Emirates, and the United Kingdom to get a maritime corridor through to support humanitarian assistance. All sounds great, doesn't it? Go yes, woo, 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 looking after civilians. No. As Doctors Without Borders say in their statement, the US plan for a temporary pier in Gaza to increase the flow of humanitarian aid is a glaring distraction from the real problem: Israel's indiscriminate and disproportionate military campaign and punishing siege. The food, water, and medical supplies so desperately needed by people in Gaza are sitting just across the border. Israel needs to facilitate rather than block the flow of supplies. This is not a logistics problem. It's a political problem. They say, rather than look to the US military to build a workaround, the US should insist on immediate humanitarian access using the roads and entry points that already exist. Now, as Channel 4 News' international editor Lindsay Hilton puts it, building a seaport for aid into Gaza City will take months, during which many more children will die of malnutrition. But if Israel opened the Erez crossing and cleared the road, aid could be sent in by truck now and save lives immediately. So why isn't the US insisting on that? Good question. Another point, Israel is obstructing aid in many ways, which I'll come on to, but that includes Israel using their security vetting to hold that aid up. And they'll once again have inspectors in the Cypriot port where the aid will come from. So they'll just do the same thing again, block the aid coming into this new stupid idea of a seaport. Now, there's another key point. The aid will come to the coast. Then what? What happens then? It's not like the large majority of Gaza's population are concentrated by the coast. They're not. How's it going to get distributed? Who's going to do that? Now, in the worst affected area, northern Gaza, There was almost no aid agency presence because Israel has kept everybody out. Bear in mind, they say they've completely defeated Hamas in northern Gaza. So that is just completely under Israeli occupation, and that's where they're starving to death in particular. Now, any suggestions for who could distribute this aid? I know, I've got an idea. How about the main humanitarian agency in Gaza, UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees? Oh, bad luck. Israel's led a bad faith smear campaign against it in an attempt to destroy it, which the US made itself voluntarily complicit with, along with many other Western governments, like the United Kingdom, to financially throttle UNRWA by withdrawing funding based on unevidenced nonsense claims, which even on their own terms, the claim that 0.04% of UNRWA workers were involved in the 7th of October is not a reason to collectively punish the entire Palestinian population by helping to starve them to death. Now, the likes of the US also suspended funding to it, only belatedly reversing that decision. Gaza is a war zone. Much of it is rubble. Its roads have been destroyed all over the place. There's Israeli snipers killing lots of people. There are also lots of bombs being dropped. There are also lots of desperate, starving civilians. How do you get the trucks and drivers into all that without a ceasefire and without a means of security to protect the drivers and trucks? Last week, when aid trucks were finally allowed into northern Gaza for the first time in a month, Israeli soldiers massacred desperately starving Palestinians, then lied about it. Now, the facts of the situation have been set out in a new report by Refugees International, based on interviews with dozens of government officials, humanitarian workers, NGO staff. And that report says Israel is consistently and groundlessly impeding aid operations within Gaza, blocking legitimate relief operations, and resisting implementing measures that would genuinely enhance the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza. It adds, our research makes clear that conditions inside of Gaza are apocalyptic. They say after 5 months of war, Palestinians are struggling to find adequate food, water, shelter, and basic medicine. Famine-level hunger is already widespread and worsening. They say Israeli authorities have erected unnecessary hurdles, complicated logistical processes, and an unpredictable vetting system, rendering the inspection regime overwhelmingly burdensome, with layers of bureaucracy and inspection limiting working hours. Now, despite Israel's claims, and they really are, let's be fair to them, absolute experts in bullshit, UN data finds the average number of trucks delivered in Gaza in February fell by 50% compared with the previous month. The Rafah crossing into Egypt, note, that's mainly the whole point of that, it's for commercial deliveries. The capacity isn't there to process the massive aid that Gaza now needs. Now, furthermore, when the World Food Programme tried for the first time in 2 weeks to bring food aid into northern Gaza, that a convoy 14 lorries, which is woefully not substantial, it was turned away by the Israeli Defence Forces and then looted by the inevitably desperate civilians who are starving to death. Now, what Israel has done is limit land entry points for aid. It's imposed an intentionally cumbersome bureaucratic system that holds everything up, stops things which are supposedly double use, which is all sorts of basic things that Gaza needs, waged war on the main humanitarian agency, as well as targeted the police force there who previously protected the aid missions, which they must have known. You've also had, frankly, disgusting, twisted Israeli protesters blocking aid using roadblocks from, for example, Kerem Shalom crossing. They even set up a giant bouncy castle there to turn an attempt to starve the people of Gaza into a fun family day out. You can't make this disturbing shit up. It is a horror film. The same Israeli police who refused to sort those murderous protesters out happily used water cannon against peace protesters in Tel Aviv. Now, those police also blockaded a humanitarian aid convoy organised by Standing Together, an Israeli peace movement which brings together Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel. It's very straightforward. You don't need to be a conspiracy theorist here. You just literally need to read back what Israeli government ministers said. 2 days after the 7th of October atrocities, Yoav Gallant, Israel's defence minister, declared, and I must quote, "I have ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed." He added, "We are fighting human animals and we're acting accordingly." There's nothing really more to say, is there? Israel stuck by its word. They have abided by this genocidal statement, which was quite correctly submitted by South Africa as evidence in its case against Israel for genocide at the International Court of Justice. Submitted, I would note, because it is an obviously genocidal statement. Now, you get some Israeli stooges claiming, oh, it's Hamas, they're stealing the aid. What are you even saying here? After 5 months of a regional military superpower smashing an area the size of East London to tiny little pieces, with the overwhelming support of the United States, what are you saying? Israel has lost the war and Hamas is still in charge. The fact is, under international law, as the occupying power, Israel is legally responsible for the welfare of the civilian population. The International Court of Justice issued provisional measures ordering Israel to ensure humanitarian aid could be accessed in order to prevent genocide. It's abundantly clear that Israel is deliberately starving the people of Gaza to death in order to put into practice the multiple genocidal statements made by Israeli ministers and army officers who have made it clear on multiple occasions they want the Palestinian population to either leave or die. And it's clear, by the way, that whatever happens, we're not going to get humanitarian aid in any way properly distributed and the needs of a displaced, desperate population met until the bombs stop falling and the bullets stop being fired. As I keep saying, one of the great crimes of our age, a crime which Western allies of Israel are all complicit in. The blood is all over them as well, their hands, and it's not going to be washed off. And I'm just going to have to be honest, a lot more Palestinians are going to die. They're going to die. They're going to suffer hideous, painful, tortured, and often lonely deaths. In keeping with the proportions up to this moment, nearly 40% of those who will continue to die, they're going to be children, teenagers, toddlers, babies. They're already being burned alive. In some cases, slowly crushed to death under rubble. They're being shot repeatedly, including directly in the head, like the children aged 5 to 8 received by a US doctor in Gaza recently. And they're going to starve. They're going to starve to death. Many children are already starving to death. People are wasting away. Israel knows this. Its Western allies know this. But those allies refuse to put any meaningful pressure on Israel with some occasional public hand-wringing, which Israel quite rationally knows it can ignore. It has already got away with some of the worst atrocities of the 21st century. They have shown, again, the evil which humans can be capable of inflicting on others. What we are seeing here is mass murder. It is genocide. All of it the responsibility of Israel and the governments which stand behind them. We can't let them get away with it. Please like and subscribe. Do share this video. Listen to us on podcasts. You can keep the show on the road on patreon.com/I'll speak to you soon.